Again, welcome to Product Coffee. Today, we've got a real special treat. A few weeks ago, we had a workshop with Ravi Mehta, who many of you know as one of the thought leaders in our space, and his colleague and co-founder of Outpace, Victoria Young Idol is joining us today to talk about some of the same topics we've been questioning for the last several months. With the explosion of AI tools available, how do I start using these as a product manager to be more effective and impactful and take on a greater leadership role in my company by being up to speed and advancing my skills with these technologies? We're going to go deep on that topic today with Victoria. And I'm really excited to get into this. If you have not already done so, if you're not already familiar with how we do things, jump over to productcoffee.com/notes. That's productcoffee.com/notes, and that'll put up a Google Doc. And we would love everybody to jump in and contribute to our notes as we go through this. As you have a thought, as you have a meaningful takeaway, please drop your thoughts into that document. You can save it to a copy or a link to your own Google Drive. And when we're done with this session, we'll also paste the chat into that notes document. So everything that we've talked about will be there for your reference in the future. So having said all of that, and with all that set up, I want to welcome to the stage our friend, Victoria. Victoria, welcome to Product Coffee. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, well, you're great.
Awesome. Yeah, it was great just hearing everyone's backgrounds and hearing about, where everything's at with people's journeys. And I'm super excited to be as helpful as I can today. So, this is meant to be an open discussion. Totally welcome any and all questions. I'll give a brief intro about my background, kind of what I'm building at Outpace right now with my co-founder, Ravi. And then we'll dive into kind of the context around why AI tools today are kind of, becoming more and more valuable and useful to incorporate into your day-to-day. And then we'll break down all of the different ways in which you can incorporate AI tools into your workflow. So feel free at any point, just raise your hand, ask a question, drop it in chat, whatever it is. Jason, you can feel free to, help me if there's questions that I'm missing, just interrupt me and we'll dive into it. So
you bet.
Yeah, thanks so much for everyone being here today. My background is I previously worked in, a few larger tech companies. I worked at Uber for the launch of Uber Pool. Then I was at Facebook working on Facebook Live and Facebook Watch before joining Netflix as a product manager. And from there, I went into startups and was building a couple different apps that I had at a venture studio in the future of work and well-being. And as part of that, I was coaching and just supporting others in their career journeys. When my mentor and friend Ravi, he reached out and was like, hey, there's got to be some way for us to better productize the coaching experience. And so we teamed up and created Outpace, which is basically a way for you to get instant on-demand guidance and support from an AI product coach that is trained on expert knowledge from top product leaders. And so I'll share with you guys how that works at the end, because that is one of the tools, but there's so many tools available today. And I also want to set the stage for kind of why now? Why is it, now is the time to kind of begin incorporating AI into your workflow and help you really get your own competitive advantage out in this very crazy economy that we're in today. So that is the first step. And let me dive into a presentation I created. Again, let's keep this free flowing. So I'll have the deck up and I'll walk through the slides, but again, please drop questions and I'm happy to answer them as we go. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Classic Zoom presentation question. Okay, great. So we're going to dive into how to leverage AI as your superpower as a product leader. So today, more than ever, right, being a product leader requires being very dynamic and evolving with new demands that are coming up And as you're exploring whether you're, transitioning to a new company, or if you're trying to level up and get promoted within a certain company, there's always so many dimensions to being a product leader. And that's why AI can play a role across a lot of different aspects of, your experience as a product leader, and really helping you improve all of those aspects. So, AI is not new, right? Like, there are people who have been working on it and studying it for such a long time, but right now it's definitely have a moment. And, the why now of this moment is the large data sets that are available have been trained in such a way that there's now an opportunity to have them be much more advanced in recognizing the different patterns, and to have generative AI be really able to help create new outputs. And so that is one of the most exciting components of AI today. Is generative AI has accelerated and grown so much in just the past few months, right? Even day by day, there's tons of new progress. It's so hard to keep up with everything going on. And that's super exciting, because now it's becoming so much more applicable to all of us, and so much less of just a tool that only the big companies like Netflix and Facebook can use, right? Like, machine learning and recommendations and all of those forms of AI have primarily been, helping these big tech companies gain their competitive advantage and be really, data driven and personalized. But today, all of us in this room can leverage AI now because of the tools that have become available, which is super exciting. And I love, I can't remember who mentioned it, but the Chat GPT on the watch, I really need to do that, because I love my Apple Watch and I love Chat GPT, and that's like the best combo. So we're also seeing like AI is having a huge business impact, right? Like 83% of early adopters have already seen how AI is helping them make better decisions. Again, like, not really surprising, because that's what AI should be doing, right? It's able to process large volumes of data super quickly, and help us see and make decisions off of better analyses that previously took a ton of time. And, companies that are already using AI are already seeing significantly improved revenue growth from their incorporation of AI. So at a very macro level, at a, top level for business, AI is having an impact. And if we kind of go down and go into the micro level of your day-to-day, we'll see how that also can be applied and used really effectively. So this is what my co-founder Ravi shared, I think a couple weeks ago now, in his talk. And I just wanted to go over it briefly again, just because this will help us think about the ways in which AI can be broken down from the really high level into your more day-to-day skill-based, like, how do I level up as a product leader? So there's 12 competencies that are broken down into each of these 4 categories. But essentially at the high level, there's these 4 areas of product execution, just being able to build really exceptional products; customer insight, which is being able to deliver on what the customer actually needs; and strategy, which is really balancing trade-offs and understanding how you can drive real impact; and then influencing people, right? Which is, as most product leaders know, this is often actually the most challenging part, because it requires a lot more nuanced approaches to getting people really bought in, motivated, and moving forward towards the overall vision. And so we'll now take a look at how, based on those areas, right, there's different ways in which AI can support you in each of those areas. And before we even do that, though, it's really important to think about what are the guiding principles for working with AI. And so, we got a little drawing going on. It's the first thing I would say is, as with anything in product, you want to have clear goals, right? And so let's start there and be very specific about which area in your current product leader work stream that you're dealing with. Are you seeing like, hey, I could use a little bit more support, or hey, this isn't working as smoothly as it could be? And so getting specific on what those goals are, really, really important. And then we go into the tool selection, which we'll do some of that today together. But really figuring out, which tools can help integrate into your work stream and with your data most effectively. Every company is so different. We have people from startups, we have people from bigger companies. There's just such a wide range. And so picking which one can actually go into your work stream is really critical. And of course, leverage, if you have the team of data scientists there, that's always great. They are the experts at the end of the day when it comes to the more deep analytics, and working with them is key. And then, AI is not like a, incorporate it and then forget it kind of thing. There are just so many ways to continuously be improving. I love that you guys have, Product Coffee is offering the prompt engineering. That's definitely really, really valuable. And, even with prompts, like there's constantly room for improvement, right? With AI, it's like always learning, always evolving. And so staying dynamic is really important. I'm going to pause there really quickly just so I can check the chat and open up some space for questions. Anyone have any questions so far? Nope. Okay. I can't really see everyone at once, so feel free to just chime in if there's something.
I got a question for you.
Yeah, Stephen.
I'm sitting in the session here today to learn more about AI and how it applies to our work. When I hear you talk about it, it kind of sounds like a very advanced magic 8-ball. Am I thinking?
It sounds like, sorry, can you repeat that?
You make AI sound like a very advanced magic 8-ball.
Yeah, a very advanced magic 8-ball. Tell me more about kind of where it's sounding like it's super magical from what I've shared so far.
Well, just that it can really answer a lot of questions for you,
yeah.
Give you insight. It'll do a lot of calculations for you, help you to work with data sets and bring you the insights back, but also, I should say, fabricate what's coming next, not just read what happened and give you an analysis, but it's going to help you create the future. That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, okay. So that it's AI can, it sounds like from what I've shared so far, that AI might be creating more part of the process of creation. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of what's exciting about it is it can play a huge role in that and accelerate creation. But the challenge is, as product leaders, we have to, manage it so that the direction of the creation and what it's creating is actually, relevant and within our ethical guidelines and all of that, because it can be very, very, very creative. It's actually better at being creative than being accurate half the time now, which is really interesting. Rebecca, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, hey, thank you. It's interesting on the slide before you mentioned influencing people, and that's really been something that's prevalent for us as kind of a tool. We've been using machine learning for now 5 years, building our tool. And I'm really curious, you actually just said a sentence and you said it like almost that the data relevancy isn't as impressing, but something we've gotten feedback on, right, is that in order for product leaders to influence people, they need confidence in what they're being presented. And a lot of what AI is presenting doesn't lend itself to being confident data, right? Because it's like the ghost behind, or it's Oz basically. So like, what are your thoughts on that and how products can add confidence in what they're delivering via AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's actually my next slide. So
fantastic. Okay.
one of my slides. We'll dive into this one and then we'll hop back to the other one. Analytics, right? And the accuracy is really key. And that's where, there are a lot of different tools out there. Some tools are structured to be accurate and other tools are more focused on being generative and creative. And so knowing when to lean into each is part of leveraging AI in the most strategic and effective way as a product leader. So, for example, some ways in which AI for data gathering and analytics can really create benefits for you is analyzing existing data sets that you have, proprietary data on. So like if you, collected 1,000 customer, responses via a survey, or you have data from your website traffic or your app traffic, right? Those existing sources of data, AI can really quickly help you analyze, aggregate, and provide a report around, what the insights and what the most interesting aspects and trends of that data are. So the accuracy in that use of AI will be high. If you're leveraging AI for research, which I actually often do, Jason asked me to kind of talk through a little bit of my current workflow with AI. And a lot of times I use AI for competitive analyses, right? And I'll ask I work a lot with ChatGPT. I love ChatGPT, which is why I'm a big proponent of that prompt engineering course coming up. But you know, using ChatGPT for research can be helpful to get like a baseline, but it does spit out sometimes data that is not accurate. And you can't rely on that confidently if you're not validating the sources and just confirming, you know, what it's saying is true. So in that instance, when you're leveraging generative AI, then it's less effective and useful when it comes to accuracy, right? And so picking and choosing between the tools is really, really important. And so I have a couple tools here that are specific for different tasks. And all of these I have links to actually, so I'll make sure that the links are in this deck as well. But when there is, you know, again, existing data that you have as a product leader from your company, from your product, tools can provide things like all-in-one reporting, like analyzing all the data you already have and providing really useful reports that you can then take action on. There's a tool called Viable that does a great job with that. If you want to do some immediate testing, let's say you're Airbnb and you have, you know, new change to your homepage and you want to see if that drives more conversions to people clicking on and booking new homes on Airbnb, you can use something like Optimizely, which helps you actually A/B test really quickly, you know, what's most effective. If you want to lean into something that's much more advanced, like real-time machine learning predictions, then you can leverage Amazon SageMaker to integrate with your existing platform, right? To say, hey, what are the trends that I'm noticing from existing user data now? And what does the AI predict may be the next best market for us to move into, or the next best, you know, price potentially for us to launch a new product at. And then if you're launching user surveys, this is a generative AI product that you can have block surveys literally write the entire user survey for you. So you don't, as a PM, you don't necessarily have to work with user research or UX or anyone. You can just have block surveys, at least get the first draft out. And so there is some nuance to knowing which tool to use when to rely on it for accuracy. But the tools that use existing data sets can provide very valuable, accurate data. And then anything that is creating, you know, always double check kind of the sources, I would say. Does that answer your question, Rebecca? Are there additional questions you have?
Yeah, I think that absolutely answers the question. I think a lot of what we're talking about, right, is it's all about like the learning models that we're creating behind the scenes and presenting that really well. But yeah, I think it just making sure that any tools that we use give us the confidence, right? Because that's again something we focus when we're building, and it's like presenting the data behind this. Like having data behind the scenes isn't great if somebody can't see it. It's accessible, but we need to be confident about it. And just that's just kind of some feedback I keep getting, and I thought that was just interesting to think about.
Yeah, totally. And you know, once you have, you know, the report, right? Then I mean, I'll walk through an example of a workflow that I have. But let's say I start with user research and I ask ChatGPT to compile some, you know, competitive analysis for me of all the different coaching apps that are in the product space, since that's the space that we're building in, right? And it can literally output a chart of all of the competitors, their features, pricing, whatever I ask it to do in my prompt, it can do that, which is great. Then what I would want to do is like validate that. Then the next step, for example, could be I want to pull existing data on my website of how our website is performing relative to maybe some other websites in terms of site traffic. So I could use Optimizely, integrate it into outpace.co and see, you know, what's working or what's not with our messaging, what is the conversion rates, take a look at that, and then compare that to other third-party data I have on other, you know, competitors and their conversion rates, and see that all in one place. And so I'm kind of mixing and matching different tools as I'm going through my workflow. And then I could look at my app data too and say, okay, based on, actually don't have a link here, but I can provide one to you guys for like some really great app tools, app analytics tools like Amplitude that can really help you look at, you know, conversion funnels and engagement within your app if you're building one. And so kind of mixing the qualitative and the quantitative analysis together to support your argument And then you can say, okay, well, I've looked at what competitors are offering. I've looked at their pricing. I've looked at our conversion rates and their conversion rates, engagement rates. Because of all this data, now I'm going to propose XYZ, right? And so that gives you the confidence at that point because you've combined a lot of analysis and research together, using AI to make that entire process way less time consuming for you, right? Like doing an independent competitive analysis, going to each website, copying and pasting stuff. Like now ChatGPT can do all of that for you in like 5 minutes, which is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcia, I see your hand is up as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on, Rebecca, I think that was a great question because, having worked in some of the machine learning space over the last 10 years or so, what we found is that it's that black box that both our users and then even if we are making decisions internally really want to understand and have more insight into. And I'm curious if any of these tools sort of do open that up a bit. Certainly validation, that manual validation can be done afterward, but I'm wondering how much detail is presented. And it may be, we may be in early stages of this, right? In terms of trying to open up that black box to say, here's how to get to this conclusion.
That is a great question. I see where you're coming from now with the black box. I think for some of these tools, the data, like you mentioned, Marcia, is just like way more easily verifiable, like website traffic, for example, right? Like you can see if if the AI produces a report saying 33% coming from mobile, you can literally track every single one of those visits and break that down. For things that are more complex, like, when I used to work at Netflix, part of my role as a product manager was literally to try to explain to, Hollywood talent and content executives, like, how does the algorithm work to promote shows on Netflix? And that was a challenge because I couldn't really explain exactly how it worked. All I could say was the algorithm is optimizing for one goal, which is for people to click watch and watch for a long period of time. That's it. That's the goal of the algorithm, right? And it's taking into account a lot of different variables. And based on the variables that it's learning from, it'll choose which show to promote. And so there's no direct answer, which is really frustrating for a lot of people. But, when you allow the algorithm to learn, it is optimizing for the goal. And the best way to kind of test if it's doing that correctly or not is to A/B test. So one example of what we did at Netflix is I actually had to work on a show that, the executives were really excited about and wanted to push to everybody. But our initial predictions were that not that many people actually wanted to watch the show. And so there was this big tension around, do we force promote it to everyone, or do we allow the algorithm to automatically detect and target people who actually would click and watch the show, which would be the goal, right, overall, instead of showing people a show that they're not going to click and watch because they're going to just go back to choose whatever they want to watch anyway. And so what we did was we ran an A/B test to say, okay, we're going to promote and just push the show to everybody who is not, whether or not the algorithm thinks they're going to watch it, we're just going to show them the show in their Netflix homepage, or we're going to let the algorithm choose who to show the show to. And in the A/B test, what we found was the outcome was that the algorithm was much more effective at getting a higher conversion rate because it was more targeted. And so A/B tests can help you prove the best outcome for whether or not your AI is doing what it should be doing. So even though you can't explain exactly in detail, I mean, even the data scientists and the algorithm, machine learning engineers can't explain exactly how everything is working. You can say, hey, if our business outcome is X, I'm showing you that the A/B test is leading us towards X, right? Better than, XYZ or whatever else. So that's another way that you can kind of leverage the data to help you in a situation. Faith, I see your hand up as well.
Yeah, hi, Victoria. Just a quick question, maybe just for clarification purposes.
Totally.
Myself, but I have the impression that using machine learning to achieve predictive analytics kinds of results like you're describing with, predicting predicting user acceptance or interest in something versus using generative AI to do things like draft a user survey or compile competitive information, where there's some kind of notorious or sensational examples out there of generative AI tools just having a propensity to kind of make things up that sound truthy, but actually don't really exist. And so, like, to me, I usually feel like there's an important distinction, between those two things. But when thinking about, the amount of confidence to have in the result, I guess I'm just leery, unless I'm working with a database of competitor information that I know we already have, looking for patterns in it, versus just kind of asking the internet, hey, what kind of competitors are out there and what are their characteristics? I wonder if you can just I wonder if you have any comment on that distinction.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question and great point. 100%, absolutely. If you ever have proprietary data in a data set that you can reliably pull from, that would be ideal. And there are ways where you can have ChatGPT like reference that specific data set. I'm actually not familiar with exactly how the prompt works, but I've seen like demos on the internet and stuff. So I would say, yes, if that's an option, definitely use a trusted data set, right? That's always better. In if you're being scrappy and you don't have access to that, then the next best option is to get I think of generative AI as a great tool for getting that messy, like first draft. So if you ever need a first draft of a memo, of, competitive analysis, it'll spit that out for you. And then your job then is to review it and confirm and validate that things that you're presenting are actually accurate. And then so it becomes more like it's definitely an assistant. It's not like the final trusted product anytime you're leveraging generative AI.
Yeah. Thanks, Victoria. That makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Thanks.
totally. Great. So another area I had was for task automation, which this kind of, task automation is much lower stakes than, analytics and generative AI. This is just like, hey, AI, help me do things that literally take me so long to do because I'm not a machine. And it can just free up so much time for, deeper thinking. It reduces repetitiveness and, burnout for you. It can also prevent errors because it's, pulling from things that already exist. So, for example, if you guys have not tried something like Otter AI, that is an awesome tool for like transcribing meeting notes and your existing meetings. So a lot of times as a product manager, you're in a meeting and you're taking down all the action items and things like that. And now there's so many tools. Otter.ai actually has a ton of competitors now. It's blown up so much in just the past year. But there's so many tools now that can actually help you write meeting notes and recaps, things that are super repetitive that you don't really want to do, but you kind of have to do. I think this is probably the best area to lean into AI, just because it's the tools are pretty, automatic, they're integrated, and there's, again, low stakes because it's something that is, again, just that first draft. It's not that creative. It's more repetitive than anything. So Notion, I don't know if you guys have used Notion. I'm a big fan of Notion. We use that a lot for Outpace. Our entire company is basically in Notion. But Notion AI allows you to click one button and write a prompt in Notion to do things like write a product brief or, write out some requirements for this new feature idea. And in one button click, you get a draft of that entire doc that may have just, taken at least 30 minutes to draft in the past. And so that is super exciting because, sometimes half the battle is getting started, right? When you're facing, can't remember who on Twitter was talking about this, but the blank page problem, right? When you're just sitting in front of an empty doc and you're like, oh crap, I have to write out the objective and I have to write out, all of the context, and then I have to break down the requirements. This eliminates that and just gives you something to work with. And then you can go into editing mode and refinement mode. Similarly, there's a great tool called Tone, and that basically it has tons of integrations with like Figma, with DALL-E, and you can give it a prompt and say, hey, create a product roadmap for an app, a fitness app that's helps people with physical therapy, right? And it'll generate an entire presentation for you to work off. So then you can go in and edit it and customize it. So anything that, is hard to begin or is really repetitive, there's some great tools for that now. does anyone have a favorite one, or is anyone familiar with some of the tools that I mentioned? Or any other new ones that perhaps I haven't mentioned?
I commented Victoria in the
Oh,
chat there.
yeah.
Otter is a huge personal favorite of mine. I've been evangelizing that one since its early release, and one of my favorite tricks is to have it running in real time while I'm in a meeting, just because. And I joke about the ADHD thing, but it's not false. It's sometimes you get lost in a meeting and you need to go back and look at what someone said a minute ago, and having that
Yes.
transcript always ready to go is just a huge power tool for me.
Totally. It's so helpful. And yeah, it's a huge time saver too. So tools like that, I think are kind of more no-brainers in terms of incorporating into your day-to-day, just because, they're designed to do very basic, but very useful and typically, time-consuming things for humans. And so, yeah, and I also wanted to open up, are there any other kind of pain points in your current product workflows that take up a lot of time, that are kind of tedious in your day-to-day, that, you wish you had an AI to help you with? I was just curious from the group. Oh yeah, Hallie.
Oh, I was just gonna, I was actually a question back when you were talking about
Oh.
if anyone knew these tools or had others, and I think Marcia may have said this, or somebody said this in the chat, but I tried Gamma for like a product summary deck. I'm
Yes.
really excited to try this one that you've mentioned, because I gotta be honest, like I was not impressed with Gamma. I felt like it created a lot of nonsense, and like trying to edit that was like, it was like if I told, I don't know, one of my kids at some point, like, hey, create me a deck on what mom does. And like, no, that's not at all. That has nothing to do with anything. Like, you maybe got the word product management in there like 15 times. That's winning.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see something do something better.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've also played with Gamma. I think between the two, I mean, neither of them are perfect by any means. A huge part of it is the prompt and being like as specific as possible as you can with the prompt. And they do better with like basic things like, create a template of a product roadmap for XYZ, as opposed to like, a lot of times you have to go back in and edit and add specific, data points and things like that. You can like regenerate the DALL-E images multiple times. It's pretty out there. Some of the images I get are like pretty crazy. But what's cool about Tome is they have integrations into the slides. So you can have a Figma and a video play directly in your presentation. So it creates a very seamless experience. But I will say one of my pet peeves with Tome is that it's hard to like move stuff around because it's so templatized. So like things kind of lock into spots on the slide. So anyways, that's just which is why I'm currently in Pitch instead of in Tome. So there's a time and a place for each of these tools. And I think, I always kind of play around and start with something. And if it's just not working for me, I kind of move on to the next tool and kind of go in there. So yeah. Awesome. Any other kind of pain points in your day-to-day from a task automation standpoint? If not, I can kind of move on to the next. All right. So idea generation and influence, another big component of being a PM. And so I kind of spoke to some of these points already around competitive analyses, but when it comes to like coming up with product features or even creating a roadmap, ChatGPT is fantastic for this. It can, if you feed it enough information, so when you start a chat, you can tell ChatGPT what it is, right? Like you are a product leader at this company. Now I want you to write a draft of a memo to launch a new product feature for, product leaders to use AI to write their product memos, right? And so it can then spit out for you based on each quarter kind of some feature ideas that you may want to incorporate in building a product like this. And so this is really helpful just as you're brainstorming. Again, like it's not going to be crazy accurate. It's not going to solve your problems for you, but it's a great starting point if you're facing kind of the blank page problem and you're like, oh, like I'm overwhelmed. I have so much data. I'm not sure where to start. There's so many feature ideas from all of my, my team members and customers. It's a great place to kind of gut check your thinking and get a sounding board to validate like, okay, well, actually, these 3 product features I wanted to roll out align with the strategy because, I'm seeing ChatGPT also repeat it back to me when it knows, when I've given it the knowledge that it needs to have to support and create this initial roadmap idea. There's also a tool called Whimsical that helps you make mind maps, also great for idea generation. You can just click and add a word and it'll automatically create like branches of additional ideas. Gamma, like we just talked about, another example of kind of idea generation of creating a basic presentation foundation. And all of these are just helpful, again, for like the first draft, the initial kickoff, or editing something that you've already kind of thought through further. So one part of my workflow, for example, as I'm writing something, I actually use ChatGPT for a significant part of our content marketing. And so I'll have ChatGPT write a first draft of a blog post, then I'll go through, I'll edit the blog post, and then I'll copy paste that blog post back into ChatGPT and have it do a final edit or change the tone or add more research. And that's kind of a great way to kind of work with it throughout your process and incorporate it into your day-to-day to reduce the time spent that you would have in coming up with the first draft and then getting it to the finish line. So yeah, any other questions on this? Great. So when we think about the influence component, writing is a big part of influence, presenting is a big part of influence, but there's also so many nuances to how you want to work with people in order to influence them as a product leader. And so part of Outpace is also an AI tool that you can use. I talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but I wanted to kind of share why we're building it. We're trying to give everyone access to executive coaching, essentially, which both Ravi and I have found to be really valuable in our career. And the way we're doing that is we're kind of combining content that has helped product leaders really excel with Pacey, which is our AI product coach. And so Pacey is trained on knowledge and experiences of existing product coaches that have worked at some really great companies. And so you can basically ask Pacey anything, and Pacey will give you guidance on kind of how to navigate that specific situation. So if you think about a day-to-day companion for your work and your workflow, if you're not doing something that's much more technically skilled, like technical skills based, like analytics or, writing a product requirements document, things like that, you can work with Pacey for more nuanced things. Like, how do I influence my manager who, I feel like they don't trust me, right? Like these complex, murky questions, Pacey can help talk you through it at, again, a basic level. So is Pacey completely replacing executive coaches? No, but it's the most affordable and efficient option for working with and just gut checking, having a place to think through some of the problems that you have, right? And so that's kind of how we think about Pacey, is it's like your companion. It's there for you to just gut check things, bounce ideas off of, provide guidance for you. And it's a really great tool to also have as a product leader when you're dealing with things that are a lot more complicated. So, oops. So in Outpace, in the app, you actually have modules of different content pieces that you would likely want to review and encounter as a product leader, from improving decision-making and strategy to prioritization. Like there's just tons of areas to kind of work through as a product leader to constantly be leveling up and improving. So we've developed content for that. And so you get to explore that content and cover that content with Pacey in what we call like the learn, practice, and apply feedback loop to really take frameworks and knowledge and really, make that actionable in your day-to-day. So I wanted to just share another example of like what it's like working with Pacey. So it's very text-based, but you can see here, if you're trying to get executive buy-in, Pacey can help you figure out how to do that. Just kind of take you out of your own head for a minute and be kind of a sounding board, right? Help you break down the steps of how to think about things. And you can continue to, ask it more specific questions. And so this is just another example of an AI tool that's available to help you become more effective at your role. So yeah, any questions? No?
I think this is really awesome. I have not jumped into really experiment with Pacey yet, but when Robbie was talking about this a few weeks ago, uh, the whole value proposition that you point out is the fact that the best leaders get that one-on-one personalized coaching, but depending on where you are in your career, your company may not be investing in that. It's something you have to invest in for yourself, and it's out of reach for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So this is an exciting application that I think is going to be a real game changer for a lot of people. I really thank you guys for innovating in this direction and bringing this to the market.
Oh, thanks, Jason. That's so kind. I will share that with Robbie. But it's, it's a start, right? Like, I think we're just trying our best to create a solution that is going to help people in some way, at least to start, before it can get more and more innovative and more personalized. Stephen, I see you have your hand up, so I'll pop to you. And I see Matt has a question as well, so I'll get to that too.
I have a question. Could you go back to the previous slide, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
See, when I look at this, it seems to me like we're saying Pacey or the app can really help you develop answers and like come up with solutions to these different problems. But what my impression is, it could be, I'm very shallow in this right now, is that a lot of these abilities come from experience and skills where you work on things over time, you learn and fail, and you build up the sensibility. And when you lean on the application like you're doing, you're not building up any sensibility for yourself. And so you're getting a quick answer, but without the application, you're not any better off yourself.
So yeah, I think application is a key part of our experience. Like, the goal with Pacey is Pacey provides those suggestions to you, just as a coach would, an executive coach would, right? Like, but it can't do the thing for you. You have to then take action and do it yourself. But Pacey will check in on you and keep you accountable. So if you haven't done the thing, like Pacey's like, hey, in order for you to build a strong relationship with your stakeholder, you have to set a one-on-one and you have to understand what their motivations are, what their fears are. And only until you do that will you be able to unblock yourself from, the lack of trust that they have with you, right? And so Pacey can suggest that you do that, just like an executive coach might suggest it. And then you implement it in your day-to-day at work. You set up the one-on-one, and then you come back to Pacey and you say, hey, I did the one-on-one. This is what happened. And this is now the new problem I might have after the one-on-one, right? And so it's an ongoing kind of iterative process where you have to go execute, if you will, but Pacey's there to suggest it. Sometimes we get so stuck in our own heads. This is what I encountered when I coach people. It's like, even for myself, right? Like, I know sometimes what I'm supposed to do, but because I'm so emotionally entangled and stressed out by a certain situation and triggered, I don't do the thing I know I need to do. And so Pacey's there to help remind me, hey, like, hello, like setting one-on-one, understanding their motivations, that's the first step. That's how you're gonna, be less stressed, right? And so that's kind of, the role that Pacey can play. There's absolutely nothing that can, replace your own experience, for sure. We all have to kind of learn the hard way sometimes, but hopefully Pacey can help reduce kind of your error rate when you go into those tough conversations, right? Give you a bit of guidance. And I saw for Matt, the question around how it tailors to you specifically. So just like with any AI, the more information and context you can provide to Pacey, the more specific and useful Pacey's responses will be to you. And so it's all private. So there's no concerns with confidentiality and all of that. Like, in the past, one of the reasons we moved into AI coaching is some of our previous clients at Outpace, when we first were doing live coaching and pairing them with other executive coaches, was people were afraid that their coach might accidentally leak their confidential company data, or the very sensitive product decision they're trying to make, or their personal, like if their coach happened to know their boss on LinkedIn or something, right? Like, there were all of these concerns and complexities that could be at play. Even if we worked with the best executive product coaches and we had a confidentiality agreement in place, there is always that human element of like, oh, like, what if, they accidentally, reveal something that I shared with them, or what if, right? And so we got that quite a bit. And so part of what's great about Pacey is Pacey is an AI, so it won't accidentally tell anyone anything about your specific situation. And yeah, it's tailored right now to product management coaching, which is what Hector was asking. So it's trained on product management skills in all of these areas. And the way we've done that is we've had it basically learn the content in each of these modules and then help you apply that content to your unique situation that you bring to Pacey. And Faith, I see you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, you just kind of touched on a little bit on my question.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm wondering, I know that the work is proprietary, but I wonder if you can talk at all about, is this a fully proprietary LLM, or can you provide any transparency around the sources that Pacey has relied on in order to provide the insight to us? Or again, I know it's proprietary, but if you can say any more about the how the model was created, or what models or training methods have gone into it, I understand, of course, there's a lot of proprietary work there.
Yeah, great question. So that pairs really well actually with this specific slide, in that we do have Pacey trained on proprietary content that we've developed from working with different product leaders across each of these domains where they're an expert. So for example, Pacey would be trained on specific content that we worked on with a product leader who is known for influence, right? Being excellent at influence. And so we essentially teach Pacey about what that product leader has taught and is really good at. And then Pacey references that, and that's its proprietary knowledge, in addition to, of course, being built and leveraging existing LLMs. And that combination allows it to give, specific product guidance that's helps you apply these topics to your day-to-day. Does that answer the question, Dave?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Victoria, we got a lot of questions about platform. People are asking about Android availability. It looks like it's iOS so far. Any forecast on Android availability?
Yeah, so we're going to be, we have iOS out right now in the App Store. So if you guys want to download and play with it and then give me feedback, feel free to email me feedback directly. Would love to hear about it. You can scan this QR code right here for the app in the App Store. For Android, we're actually going to be launching a web version of Outpace that everyone can access. So Android is going to take us longer to ship. So we're just going with web first. And so, if you guys go to outpace.co, we'll definitely announce that when we're ready. It's in progress and it should be out very soon. So yeah.
I want to play with it, but I don't want to become an Apple person to do it.
That's totally fair. We will have the web platform ready for you very soon. So, and it looks like Mike has his hand up.
Yep. Just sort of following up on the question a minute ago. So obviously the content that you're training it on is proprietary, but did you start with like an open source LLM, or how did you go about? Is there a particular LLM tool that you use to kind of power the engine? I assume you didn't do it from scratch or anything necessarily.
Yes, we did not. We're powered by GPT 3 right now.
Okay.
3.5. Yeah.
Sounds good. So and that's where I think we're all getting a little bit more familiar. You need to become more familiar with how to work with these tools and understand what's possible and kind of what the infrastructure needs to look like, things like that. When you're powered by ChatGPT like that, are you standing up basically your own instance of ChatGPT in your infrastructure? Do you know how that works? Or
I would be happy to bring our CTO on to discuss that more in depth. But we do call GPT-3, and it basically we have created a backend where we pass all of the GPT 3.5 answers through our system to have it show up in our Outpace app. But the exact technical implementation, I will leave to our CTO.
Sounds good. I think that kind of dovetails into one of the questions in the chat thread, just about like privacy and security and maintaining the data yourself. So if you're running it
so
through there,
totally like what Pacey says comes out of GPT 3.5, right? But then what people are saying we contain. So
Okay.
the responses back from people is contained within Outpace. It's not
Okay.
fed back.
Sounds good. Great. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much. This is great.
Of course. Thank you guys for these great questions. They're awesome.
I
And
think
we
that,
are
just to Mike's point, sorry, I was just going to add, I think that's probably an important one. I haven't read anything on your website, obviously, so you might cover that, but that might be a really important point to somehow call out in your product branding and everything, because I think people are very nervous about that. And when you start talking about this very sensitive topic, right, like coaching, like you really want to know. It's not that I'm so much worried that Pacey would be like, well, Holly said, and like directly quote me, right? But there's things that could be said that would cause someone to know the situation or know that it came from you. And we've all been burned by those kinds of surveys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's a great point.
all right. Well, we are just about at the top of the hour, and I don't know how hard your stop is, Victoria, but what I'm going to do now is I want to thank you for bringing this to us today. This has obviously been a lot of great conversation, great insights, and some great recommendations. And really excited about what you're doing over there at Outpace, and we're really glad to highlight and feature you with that as well. And I can't thank you enough for being here. It's been fantastic, and looking forward. For those in Product Coffee Premium, Victoria and Ravi are both in the Product Coffee Premium community as well. You can reach out to them there. I know Victoria shared her email address and her contact information as well. We would love to carry this conversation forward.